Hi, I'm Aniket Kadiyan, and today we're gonna be talking about sex and gender in video games. Last time in the blog, we talked about the gender bias and sex roles commonly found in video games. We talked about the hero archetype, where a male hero has to accomplish some tasks and overcome some obstacles to save the world or defeat some evil. We talked about the damsel in distress trope, where a female heroine is captured and has to be rescued by the hero. We talked about other stereotypical sex roles, where a male is generally a warrior or an assassin, and a female character is generally a healer. We also looked at the hypersexualization of characters, both the hypermasculinization and the hyperfeminization of characters. We also talked about the concept of the ideal feminine heroine. We looked at examples such as Jill Valentine from the Underworld series, Evie Fry and Cassandra from the Assassin's Creed world, and Sarah Ames from Mass Effect. We saw how these characters, female characters, were made to be independent but still faced some stereotypes and bucked to some male dominance which is generally found in society. We also saw, after putting these games into a timeline, that how these characters evolve into more and more independent, more and more free, and actually more and more part of the game world. This can be observed in almost all of the games which have a female lead. As time has passed and our understanding of sex and gender has grown, as we have grown as a society, the role of female heroines in games has become more and more pivotal. They do not look like an extra useless addition anymore and have become a part of the core game where the game will fail without them. There have also been instances where female characters, not the lead, but as a non playing extra character, have been part of the game without them being appeared to be forced or sexualized. For example, female henchmen in Assassin's Creed Syndicate or in Mass Effect. These are non playable characters which are extras which you fight, which appear to be part of the world and appear to be completely natural and unforced. This is in direct contrast to some characters like the nuns from the Hitman series, which are over sexualized, evil female characters, the enemy of the hero, who they have to defeat and do not appear realistic in any sense. So we have established that there is some gender bias and sex roles stereotype present in video games. But the question now arises is that are these things universal in all games? Are these things felt by all parties related to the games, whether it be the players, whether it be the game developers, whether it be the people around the players? From the point of view of the developers and game companies, these video games are a business. They have to gear them towards their target audience. Now, these video games started as arcade games in the 1980s, which were frequented by teenage boys. With the advent of computers in the 1990s, these games converted to computer games. But the target audience for the game companies remained the same. A study shows that at 1980s and 90s, the number of male players outweighed the number of female players with the 80-20 ratio. So there were 80% male players. A study of 2019 shows that 52% of all players are female. That means that the target audience for the game companies has changed from their inception to now. This can be shown with the increase in number of games which are either gender neutral or female friendly. This increase should mean that there should be less controversy, less talk about the sexualization or the violence present in video games. That is not the case. So, why? So, as you can see, that while the number of female players has increased, they prefer only a certain genre of games like match 3 and simulation. But majority of the male players still prefer shooting games, role playing games, racing games, etc. This means that while the audience has increased for female players, there is still the core audience which liked the games the way they were made, which is still present, and the game companies are not going to miss on them. This means that there will always be games which would be controversial with the feminist and the social justice warrior groups. Yes, some game companies make an effort to create video games which would be socially acceptable and not face much controversy. But that only leads to tokenization, which means there is one token female character who does not go with the storyline, who does not add anything to the game, but is just there to have a female character, which would be socially acceptable. Now let's talk about players. Players face two facets of video games. One, playing the game and being affected by the game itself. And the second, the things people around them say about the games they play or about their playing habits. A survey of teenagers and young adults on their thoughts about video games gave a variety of opinions. Most females gave comments like the games are geared towards men with the shooting and violence and are not for girls, or that the games are too sexualized and put on females and you do not see girls playing games. They also had comments like, I started playing games and my friends ridiculed me, or that games are considered a boys' domain. Yes, there are a few exceptions, like a few females who wanted to play games like Call of Duty, which is a shooting game, but were ridiculed by the shopkeepers who were trying to sell them the shop, that were buying the games for their boyfriends or their brothers. Boys, on the other hand, ridiculed some types of games like Dress Up and Match 3, saying that they were girly and are not meant to be played by boys. They were also of the opinion that no matter if the game is violent or sexualized, they're not doing those things in real life. And the sexualization of the characters only makes them looks good and makes the game experience better. So what's the problem in that? Now, personally, I think the talk about gender and sex in games is subjective. It's like beauty in the eye of the beholder. There are some things which people might find offensive, and I'm not offended by them. There are some things which people might be affected by, might shape their opinions. I'm not affected by them. What a certain group might find sexualized, other group might find uplifting. What a group might find unrealistic or unachievable, another group might find that to be a target to achieve. Yes, from objective viewpoint, by just pointing out what points are there in the games and taking a decision on them, there are many games which can be considered to be offensive, which can have a gender bias, which have strong sex roles in them. But actually it depends from person to person. How do you perceive the video games? The, it boils down to this: the purpose of the video games is not to spread a message, it's to entertain. If a video game entertains me, if it engages me, if it allows me to experience a new culture, a new fantasy, it has good music, good cinematography, then yes, I will enjoy it. I will disregard everything else. If the characters are a bit too unrealistic, a bit too sexualized, good looking, it only adds to my enjoyment of the game. If I find their looks offensive, then I'm missing the point of the game. I'm not enjoying it. Yes, certain people might find that to affect their daily lives. Some people might stop playing those games. But it's on them. According to me, any discussion about sex and gender in games is a moot point. Their purpose is to entertain, not shape society. Yes, there are talks about video games and them being offensive. And yes, looking at objectively, that may be true. But like many other media platforms, such as movies and ads, video games are driven by society. What games the companies deliver to us to play are defined by what kind of society we are. So, saying that video games are offensive and discriminatory and have a gender bias is wrong. Not all games are like that. Not all people are affected by games in the same way. So, it's wrong to mark them like that. It's like discussion about any other media platform. There's always someone offended by it. There's always something wrong with it. What matters is how it affects us, which depends on how we let it affect us. Yes, there are some things which are fundamentally wrong, but sometimes it's just nitpicking. Thank you.